Hello everyone and welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. My name is Kain. I'm a League of Legends player, content creator and passionate coach. If you're interested in my personal coaching, feel free to check out the link in the description down below. And please leave a like and subscribe because I would really appreciate it and it would really help me out. As for today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys basically a NILAH guide in terms of runes, so runes NILAH guide. As for our main rune tree, you typically want to go with the Conqueror, like the Precision rune tree, and then Conqueror as your keystone, and there's multiple reasons for that. But the main reason is that Conqueror just outperforms all the other keystones in the game, specifically on NILAH. NILAH is just one of those few champions who can stack Conqueror extremely quickly, and the stats that it gives you is just amazing. Just raw AD is what NILAH needs, what she lives off, and then obviously the healing as well synergizes so well with your passive. I've tested the new PTA, it doesn't feel as good. I feel like NILAH almost stacks Conqueror just as quick as press the attack, and then the stats Conqueror gives you is just better than the extra 8% bonus damage on the PTA, so I just like Conqueror more. So I would never change Conqueror, I would always go with the Precision tree as your main rune tree, because Conqueror is so good, but then the second part also because everything here in this rune tree that we're going to be selecting is going to synergize really well with one another, and that's going to make it even more easy to select and say, hey, the Precision rune tree here is the best option for NILAH and all your games. So for the second row here, they added a new rune. Basically, it says it's Absorb Life, where basically if you skirmish with your opponent in lane and you want to heal up a little bit, you can farm some minions, now you heal up. But I don't really like it because one, on NILAH, typically if you want to farm minions, you're going to lose HP for it. So now, okay, you kill a minion, you gain some HP, but in order to get to that minion first, you're probably going to lose HP for it because you're a melee champion. Basically, I don't really like Absorb Life anyway. And then just Triumph is super good on NILAH. You're a champion that likes to fight constantly, early, in the mid game and late game. And you just benefit a lot from getting that extra missing health here after getting a takedown. You just benefit a lot from it because you will be skirmishing a lot. And also, because of your skirmishing pattern, like, you have to jump onto people, basically, to deal damage. And therefore, like, you will always get low. And then getting Triumph just allows you to keep on fighting. And it just feels so amazing. Now, Presence of Mind is something that is more viable in my opinion than Absorb Life. I think Presence of Mind is something you could really go. But like the issue with Presence of Mind is it fixes NILAH's early laning phase, like mana pool issue. But the problem is that's the only time when NILAH has a mana issue, in the early lane phase. So if you just learn how to play with your mana pool correctly in the early lane phase, then you should just go you should just play around your mana, and then you don't need Presence of Mind anyway. And Triumph is so much better, so I would just go Triumph over Presence of Mind, and then just learn how to play those first few levels with my mana pool. Now, later on in the runes, we're also going to see that we have multiple options for our mana, so then we don't need to go Presence of Mind anyway. So I would always go Triumph. And one last thing I want to say about that, League of Legends basically created a new Essence Reaver, where now it gives you mana. So currently it's not a strong item. I feel like it's relatively weaker than all the other items. They already buffed it, like they hotfixed it, but it's still not enough. They gave it 5 extra ID. I think if they can get the item to a good spot, that it might actually become like a rush item for NILAH, and then you're not going to have mana issues anyway, so then you're definitely not going to need Presence of Mind. Up until that time, you could make an argument for Presence of Mind, but I still like playing more around Triumph. Then for the next row here, let's start with the new one, Legend Haste. I don't think NILAH needs that much haste in her kit. So I don't think it's that good. And also, if I compare to the other runes, these runes are very valuable and they're more important than the Legend Haste here. That's why I wouldn't even consider picking up Haste. What I would consider to pick up would be Legend Bloodline. Legend Bloodline is quite good in the sense that it gives you lifesteal. Obviously, NILAH wants to jump into people to basically trade with them. So then having extra sustain and lifesteal helps you stay alive for a longer time, which is obviously amazing. Now, typically ADCs who struggle with finding lifesteal in their kit early on, they go typically like Legend Bloodline. That's why most ADCs go it. But NILAH doesn't really struggle with that due to her passive as well, especially with like a good enchanter support. So then I wouldn't really necessarily think of going Legend Bloodline. Why do I say that? Because it is a very good rune on NILAH, but I also really like Legend Alacrity. Now, Legend Alacrity fixes a small issue with NILAH as well, and it basically means like NILAH, when you build on her, you build items like AD and crit, and you rarely build attack speed. So you don't really have a lot of attack speed on NILAH, and that could be a bit annoying, especially if you plan to tank your team comps. If you tank your team comps, you kind of have to shred through them, and then the more attack speed you have, the easier that's going to be. It's going to feel a lot smoother. So then Legend Alacrity is going to be a great option. However, if you don't play against tanky team comps, if you play against more burst-oriented team comps, like when they have a Shaco or a Zed, I wouldn't go Legend Alacrity, because then you're just going to get one shot, or like the fights are going to be very, very short anyway, so you're not going to benefit from getting the extra attack speed. In those scenarios, instead, you're going to benefit a lot from having more sustainability and more survivability through lifesteal, for example, that Legend Bloodline can provide you with. So in those scenarios, I would go Legend Bloodline. So Legend Bloodline against like burst team comps, Legend Alacrity you could go against tankier team comps. So typically, you're going to go with Legend Bloodline, I would say, the like 60% of your games. And then for the last row here, we have multiple options, but my favorite, hands down, is Last Stand. Now the reason why Last Stand, why I prefer it so much, is because NILAH again is a melee champion. So typically before you can even start a fight, people already kite you and get you low. Or even when you're full HP and you start at a fight, you literally have to jump in there. So you're definitely going to lose some HP. And this rune basically says, hey, the lower you get, the more damage we're going to give you. Which is very good at NILAH. Like on NILAH, you're going to notice that you're not often going to fight at full HP. A lot of the times you're going to be like 60 or below 60% HP, and that's when this rune is going to start kicking in. So I really like Last Stand for that reason, and it all synergizes so well. Like if we think of this as well, Conqueror is a stacking mechanism. So obviously, at max stacks, that's when you're going to get the max value out of this rune. Before you get max stacks, obviously it's going to take a while. So it's going to take a while before you stack this. Now, obviously the longer you're in a fight, the quicker, like the better you're going to stack it. But obviously, the longer you're in a fight, the lower you're going to get. So then once you're finally stacked it, you're probably already low. So now you get the extra stats from the Conqueror. And Last Stand is also going to kick in at that time, which is going to be very beautiful, basically, very amazing. And then the extra healing from Bloodline is also going to help at that low HP to keep you alive as well, especially with Triumph. So the synergy here between these runes is literally amazing. That's why this is going to be my standard preferred option, but in like 40% of my games, I also like to go this option. And for the people who struggle with mana, you could go Presence of Mind, but I don't recommend it. I would recommend going something like this. That's it for your main rune tree. Now for your main rune tree, like I said, there's not a lot of adaptations you can make. That is different for the secondary rune trees. So my favorite secondary rune tree is going to be this: Magical Footwear with Cosmic Insight. The reason for that is Magical Footwear gives you basically a lot of snowball potential, as you don't have to spend your first 300 gold on like boots, but you can spend it on your item power spikes, and the quicker you have your items on NILAH, the stronger you're gonna get. And then obviously also, it's like, because you're gonna have these boots here that are so amazing, you're not forced to upgrade your boots very, very quickly. That means you can easily build up to like 2, 3, 4 items even, and only then upgrade your boots, which feels so good. However, sometimes you're gonna see that you have a lot of benefit out of rushing Merc Threads, or like getting your plated steel caps relatively quickly, and then obviously you don't really want to get Magical Footwear. You could still do it, but you're gonna get a little bit less value out of it if you're rushing your boots. And then the reason why I like to combine this with Cosmic Insight, especially this split, is because at this patch, they basically nerfed the Summoner spells in terms of cooldown. They didn't nerf the Summoner spells overall, in my opinion. I think they slightly buffed them, except for Ghost. But objectively, they did nerf the cooldown part of the Summoner spells. Like Cleanse, Ghost, Exhaust, Cleanse, Ghost, Exhaust, and Barrier. I think that's all of them. They got increased, like their cooldown got increased with like half a minute, 30 seconds. And now what Cosmic Insight is going to do, it's going to basically like lower that cooldown again. So Cosmic Insight was already quite good on NILAH before. Now it's even going to be like more important to go it. So this is going to be my standard favorite setup. Now, does that mean that you always have to go this setup? No. Like I said at Presence of Mind here, you don't have to go Presence of Mind because there's other options as well. If you really want to go for Triumph, but you really struggle with mana for some reason, then you could go Magical Footwear with Biscuit Delivery here, which is going to also give you mana through the cookies. So this is also a great option if you really plan on like all-inning your opponents quite a bit here in the bot lane early on, and then this is a great option as well. And for that same cost, you could also go here, Magical Footwear with Triple Tonic. This is a bit more experimental. I haven't tested this out too much, but I definitely think it's an option. So you can definitely experiment with this. I played it a little bit, and I think it's decent. But to say it's really good, I would have to play it more, but definitely experiment with this. I think it's pretty fine. Now, sometimes, so even though this is my favorite setup here, sometimes I can't go it. Why would I not be able to go it? Well, for example, if I play versus tankier team comps, or when I play versus just situations where I need more resistances, then I would go with the Resolve tree. Now in the Resolve tree, I basically split this into two parts. I would either want to get resistances for my laning phase because I'm playing versus poke lanes that can easily like annoy me in the early game, or I'm looking to get resistances to have an easier mid and late game because I'm playing versus champions who can easily burst me down. Let's start with the first part. Let's say you play in a lane where you can easily get poked. You play like NILAH, very like short range melee champion basically, into something like a Brand Ashe or a Xerath Jhin or a Ziggs Brand, or like basically these poke lanes are really, really annoying for you because you're a melee champion, like even into champs like Caitlyn, for example. Then you kind of want to go with Second Wind. A Second Wind is going to give you a lot more sustain. And then depending on your support, you can either go for Overgrowth or for Revitalize. It depends on the situation. Because Revitalize is going to give you extra heal and shield power, but obviously in that case, in order to benefit from that, you would need a support that can give you more healing and shield power, something like a Lulu or a Soraka. If you have a Nautilus who's not going to heal or shield you, then you basically don't get any benefit of that, and then you might as well go with Overgrowth, which is basically going to give you more HP, depending on how many minions or monsters die near you. This is also a really good rune that makes you a little bit more beefy, but like I said, if you have a support that gives you a lot of healing or shielding, definitely go with Revitalize here as well. Now this is it for the poke lanes. But what if you say, hey, let's say I play in an easy lane. So then you could say, why not go Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight because you play in an easy lane and this is your preferred setup. Well, that could be true, but it's not because my laning phase is easy that I can get away with this. Sometimes I can't get away with this anyway. Because in the mid game, for example, I notice that when I play my game or I'm in Champ Select, I see, Jesus, the enemy team really has a lot of strong mid-game power spiking champions. Let's say they have a Renekton top and like a Yasuo mid and a Diana jungle. That's a lot of champions who spike in the mid game who's gonna blow me up. They have a lot of burst damage and I might need more resistances against them. Or to make it even clearer, let's say the enemy team has a Shaco and a Zed mid lane or a Blanc or a Talon mid lane. Now these champions can burst you down very easily, so that even though your laning phase is like very, very easy and you can get away with this, you might just get blown up in the mid game, and in order to prevent that, we can also go more resistances. Now, specifically for the mid and late game. Now, my preferred setup is conditioning with Overgrowth. Again, Overgrowth to make you a little bit more tanky in HP, and then conditioning will give you armor and magic resist, like increased resistances basically, starting from minute 12 into the game. So basically, starting from the when the laning phase is over, like somewhere around that time, that's when you're gonna become quite strong. Like the mid and late game is gonna be now a lot easier for you to play. Again, you could swap out Overgrowth with Revitalize if you have a lot of healing and shielding champions in your team. Let's say you have a Karma bot lane and an Ivern in the jungle, for example. That's a lot of shields and healed. So then instead of Overgrowth, you might actually be tankier if you take Revitalize. So then you could go Revitalize with conditioning. But the difference is, if you play for lane, you want to go with Second Wind and Revitalize or Overgrowth. If you play for the mid and late game, you want to play for conditioning and then Overgrowth or Revitalize. Now, that's it for the Resolve tree, but there's even another tree that you could go for, and that's going to be Domination. Now, Domination, obviously, it says it itself. This is when you really want to, snowball early into the game. In that case, I would typically go Sudden Impact and Treasure Hunter. Why Sudden Impact? It gives me increased damage, so it helps me snowball my laning phase. I typically take this into lanes that I know, hey, at level 3, for example, I can just all-in them, and there's nothing they can do. This is a very easy lane phase. Then I'm going to benefit from the extra damage, it's going to secure my kills. And then Treasure Hunter as well is basically saying, hey, if you get a takedown here, you're going to get extra gold. I like to see Treasure Hunter as like a alternative to Magical Footwear. Because if I go Magical Footwear, I'm basically saying, hey, I have extra gold to spend on my items because I don't need to buy my Boots of Speed. And then basically, Treasure Hunter is basically the same. You're also saving up gold by killing people. It's a bit less guaranteed because you have to kill people or assist people. But still, it's also a form of gold income. And then the difference would be, hey, here I take my extra gold income plus a rune that's gonna give my summoner spells more up. And here I take also a rune that gives me more gold, but now a rune that deals more damage. So again, that's the difference. Typically, this is more aggressive and this is more safe. Now, do you have to go Sudden Impact and Treasure Hunter? Well, this is very snowball oriented and I really like it. But no, there are also other options. The first main option would be to swap Treasure Hunter with Ultimate Hunter. This is rather rare, and I'm going to explain you why, but it's also still viable. Now, this setup is rare, because if you go Sudden Impact and Ultimate Hunter, what's the difference here? Ultimate Hunter basically says, I'm going to have to play off of my ultimate. Because Ultimate Hunter, basically, it reduces the cooldown on your ult. And in some games, you can't really get onto your opponents. Let's say you play versus champions like Xerath. The entire enemy team comp has many champions, like 3 champions or more, who are very long ranged and who mainly will deal damage to you through their abilities. So now it's difficult for you to get onto them because they're long range, and your W is kind of useless. So in this situation, you could make two arguments. The first argument could be, I'm gonna have to play off of my ultimate. I'm gonna have to do like flash ults. Or I'm gonna have to ult, or I'm gonna have to play around the vision and bushes and then ult people. I'm gonna have to play off of my ult engages and not really off my W, my E, my Q, just playing off of my ult. So then this could be great. The only problem that I have with that is I typically say, okay, the second option that you could go in those scenarios where you play against those type of champions is not just saying that you have to play off of your ultimate more, but maybe you could fix your weakness of not being able to get onto them. Maybe you could go something like Ghost, and now you make it easier to get onto these long-ranged champions. And in that case, if you need Ghost, then you could say, okay, into those long-range champions, if I have Ghost, I can easily get onto them. But then you are very summoner spell oriented and not really ult reliant. In that case, you could go Magical Footwear with Cosmic Insight because now you're more summoner spell reliant. If you go Domination Tree, now you're going to be more ultimate reliant. It's a different mentality, but you basically try to do the same thing. You try to find a way to play around those enemy team comps. Typically, I think this is a little bit more difficult, and even if you play around your ultimate, typically you can't just get onto those people with your ultimate. Typically, you're also going to have to flash onto them with ult, or ghost onto them with ult, or just find an angle with ult, and typically sums are going to help you do that. So into those long-range matchups that are ability-oriented, I typically take Inspiration, this setup, over this setup. That's why I say it's rare. But hopefully now you understand that this is also a viable option, and it's basically a different mentality. Now, are there even more options? Yes, there are for sure. So the standard option here in the Domination Tree would be this. But you could also go for extra lifesteal, Taste of Blood. I personally think it's overkill. I think there are better runes to fix other weaknesses or to enhance other strengths, because you already have quite a lot of lifesteal in your passive. So I don't really think this is necessary, but it's viable, right? I don't really go this, but it's definitely viable. You can experiment with it, but I don't think it's a necessity. I think there's better options. And then something else you could go is going this here. Eyeball Collection is also an option. Again, I think there's better runes out there, but it's also fine. It's also viable, so you could definitely go with this. This is also quite snowball option, so this is also something you could go. And then last but not least, you could go into the Sorcery tree. Personally, keep in mind, I don't do this. I don't use this in my games. I want to cover it because it is basically viable. What you could do is you could go even like Mana Flow Band to increase your mana. And you could go Transcendence because now you don't really get Ability Haste anymore from the Navori item. And we don't really build the Navori item anymore. But even if you were to build it, you don't get the Ability Haste anymore. So then Transcendence would be a great option to compensate for that, and then with Mana Flow Band you would have a decent setup. Or you could even go Nimbus Cloak, which is also good because this fixes NILAH's mobility issue. Because NILAH is very immobile, right? She has 2 dashes, but she's still short range, which makes her quite immobile. So having Nimbus Cloak, with the extra movement speed when you activate the summoner spell like Flash or Ghost, is really, really useful. So you could go this. This is definitely a viable setup. The other runes I wouldn't really go, so I would either go Nimbus Cloak with Transcendence or Mana Flow Band with Transcendence. But otherwise, I wouldn't really go anything of these runes. Now, like I said, this theoretically sounds fun, Sorcery rune tree. Like you can hear like, okay, this makes sense. But I still believe that the other runes just outperform this, specifically on NILAH. So that's why I would like to go like with the other setups like this, for example, for aggression. This for more ult reliance. This is my standard favorite here. You could go this for more mana if you want to be more aggressive in lane or if you have mana issues. This here as well to be more aggressive in lane and experiment a little bit with this actually. And then for more defensive stats in lane, second wind with one of these two or conditioning with one of these two for team fights. So that's basically everything for the NILAH runes here. Sorry, I sometimes say NILAH, I sometimes say NILAH. I'm used to saying NILAH, but a lot of people say NILAH. And that's why I typically switch it up. But yeah, here you go. This is your NILAH or NILAH rune guide. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you learned something. And please, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe because it helps me out a lot more than you might think. So I would really appreciate it. And for the people of you who are interested in my personal coaching, feel free to check out the link in the description. But for now, thank you guys for watching so much. And hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye.